Good morning. Welcome to Just Listen, hosted by George, live podcast. It is February 11th of 2026. Sorry for the 2-minute delay. I had to switch cameras for some reason. The other one incorrectly, so I got a little spooked because of it. And so here we are now. Now, what I want to talk about is, hey, how am I doing? I think that we've got things going pretty well so far, and the thrust of it is putting you in the know about local politics in the Southern Illinois region. And I'm excited to do that for you. Um, I was listening to Congress talked to the Attorney General about the goings on with the law and order in the with the federal government right now. If you get a chance, you should probably take a look at it. I would actually stream the whole thing so that you can see exactly what folks were have are going to say and how it all started off and stuff. Because I think sometimes if you just get a soundbite, maybe you get the wrong impression. Okay, so as I always state, I'm talking about if I were running for governor of Illinois, what I would talk about, and that's based on it being a pretty uh, critical election year here in Illinois for governor. There's going to be representatives for the legislature and also the Attorney General of Illinois, and also one of the Senate seats since Senator Durbin is going to be retiring. So I'm hoping that in this part of Illinois, Southern Illinois, folks are really looking at the issues and will turn out for the primaries and then turn out heavily for the general election. Now, I want to talk about uh, fiscal stability, the budget. I've touched upon it in the past. I think that it's good to get specific. I think that there are some details still that need to be talked about if you're a candidate running for governor, even someone running for the state legislature here in Illinois. Okay, so since Governor Pritzker has been governor, he took over January of 2019, and a couple of things have happened fiscally. So there is a bullet point for reelection talking about consecutive balanced budgets. Now, I would point your attention to two things. The first one is a lot of information about the budget in general is about projections and what they think is going to happen. And the other thing is when the deficit in Illinois actually started after he got elected in 2019. As I've been telling you, the projection as of February 2026 is $267 million we're going to be in the budget in the arrears, and what is actually causing it, and why aren't the Republican side talking more about it if you're running for governor? Now, the first point is there has been a revenue decline. Okay, and what the other side, the Democrats, are blaming it on is federal tax law changes. But I want to point something out to you. So when Governor Pritzker took office, we had the COVID outbreak the following year. And as you are aware of, we actually got lots of money from the federal government over a 3-year period. And that money, based on the research, a lot of it was used for projects and to pay bills in Illinois. And there was a lot of that going on because, as I said, Governor Pritzker and the Illinois legislature received hundreds of billions of dollars in federal funding through regular non-COVID channels, primarily for healthcare, infrastructure, and education. Now that money was in addition to what they received for COVID, and that's a good point to point out to voters. And so the total federal transfers highlighted what was in fiscal year 2022 when they received 48.8 billion in total federal transfers. That is a lot of money. And as I previously stated, they were talking about how they were projecting the surplus to voters. And so last time that the governor got elected, he was promoting that. And that is a talking point for anybody running for governor because remember, property taxes and sales taxes were still very high. And even with the additional federal budget, here we are right now. Okay, so there's something called a general fund where that money is being used to pay the operating everyday expenses. That's how they termed it. So these revenues that came in to the general fund contribution the last several years ranged between 3.8 billion and 4.7 billion annually. Now, that's a lot of money, and we're still looking at that in addition to that, we had all of this other money coming in through taxation. And we're still not talking about what happened to the money from marijuana sales, what happened to the money from the slots, and even the lottery. Okay, so they did clear up the bill backlog. Now, that's important because that was tied to some of that was tied to pensions. And so taking care of people who are in the pension system is very important. And that needs to continue and it needs to be highlighted for any budgets moving forward. And the talk should be about what you can cut back on, not get rid of, but cut back on for to make sure that the pension payments are caught up and that it doesn't get back into arrears. Now, fast forward to what's happening now, and you're going to see a pivot, and the pivot started in the latter part of 2025. Why? Because the money is drying up from the federal government because federal government is saying that the money is not being used for the intended purpose, and some of that was COVID money, and that was scheduled to stop anyway. but that's the big bone. And as I previously stated, a lot of that is about illegal immigration and who is actually getting the money in the state. Now, it also will affect businesses because you are aware in the big, beautiful bill that companies, which are corporate companies, are getting tax breaks. Well, in Illinois, that's not going to be uh, adhered to. So the big beautiful bill said that corporations would get uh, corporate tax breaks that automatically reduce Illinois' taxable base. That was the first thing. Bonus depreciation, federal changes allow businesses to immediately deduct 100% of the cost of certain assets. Now, where the point of doing this is to keep businesses in Illinois. So this alone projected to cost 144 million, okay, in fiscal year 26. That's not a big number when they were already spending billions. Okay. So these are the reasons why later on Illinois legislature and the governor countered during a process called decoupling. To address the deficit, Illinois lawmakers passed Senate Bill 1911 in late 2025. This policy decouples the state of Illinois from the specific federal corporate tax breaks mentioned above. So they, meaning the state legislature, is taking away those benefits from the corporations. Why is this important? It's important because eventually the corporations are going to get tired of it, and they're going to do a couple of things. First thing that they're going to do is start laying off people to reduce their costs. The second thing that they're going to do is they are seriously going to look at leaving the states, leaving the state of Illinois. So, and then there was another one with the legislature is also ignoring the new federal bonus depreciation and updating definitions for foreign income. The state expects to recover 243 million to 250 million, nearly. So what that means is that somebody is going to have to make up that difference. And also, if you're running for governor, you need to point out who's actually going to make up the difference. Because with those two things or three things, we're talking hundreds of millions, maybe 300 million, when they were spending or getting money from the federal government of billions of dollars. So that needs to be thought about. And that's why we need to look at the legislature, what they are passing, and how it affects us in Southern Illinois, and our perception of when the legislature and the governor are doing things, are they actually putting more of a burden on Southern Illinois versus the rest of the state? And also, we need to look at that as a bullet point. If you're running for governor of Illinois, are you really looking at saving money for the taxpayers, getting them some kind of reduction when you're cutting off corporations from making taking any tax breaks? And also, since the federal government has been alienated based on the policies from the state, how are you going to make up the money? And beautiful talking point for whoever wants to run for governor. And if I were running for governor, I would be talking about it nonstop. As you've seen in my previous live podcast, that we need to be talking about taxation on the Republican side nonstop and questioning why the current administration, the governor, is touting it that we're going to have a surplus when in fact that's not going to happen. All right. So I want to look at education and healthcare. So $350 million increase for K-12 evidence-based funding and expanding childhood programs. Now, that doesn't include private schools or school vouchers or any of that sort of programs right now. This is strictly in the public schools. Early childhood, the Smart Start program received 212 million in the most recent budget, which education and early childhood is very important. What voters are concerned about is when you are in a voucher school or a different type of school, are they receiving support at all? And if working families can afford to give their kids this type of option, and also the people who are currently paying for tuition, maybe they should get a break as well. And this should be talked about because within the state, there is a lot of attention that Republican voters, especially, are trying to get the legislature to take a look at and make it more affordable for people who aren't in the public schools. Okay, so healthcare and social services. Since Governor Pritzker took office in 2019, healthcare related expenditures represent 37% of the total general fund's budget. And as of 2025, that's where we're at. Hospital support. The administration provided 3.8 billion to hospitals to improve patient access in underserved communities. Now, as we know, excuse me, the details are in the wording. Underserved communities. Who are we talking about? And as a voter voting for potentially in the next election, you need to know who they're actually talking about. Based on the data, they're talking about people who the Republicans are, people who are here illegally. And then, especially like in some of these rural areas, a couple of months ago, they were talking about that in the news during the last federal government shutdown. So Medicaid and Human Services. Spending for the Department of Human Services increased by 1.3 billion. That's 70% since 2019. And since 2019, totaling 3 billion across all funds for developmentally disabled services alone. Now, if it's for disability services, I think that that's good. There's some other details in there. And I think in the rural areas with people who may potentially have been here illegally, that was included in the funding as well. Immigration health programs. So between 2021 and 2024, Illinois spent approximately 1.6 billion on health benefits for immigrant adults and seniors. Higher funding for the health benefits for immigrant adults program was eliminated in the fiscal year 2026 budget. So that's good. And for the kids, we have to make sure that they are included in the health programs because, like I previously said, it's not their fault that they got caught in the middle of the adults arguing over who's in the country and all of those types of things. So that one, the spending on that, the only issue is who was giving us the money. Was it the federal government? Because they might not necessarily agree with that approach. And as a compromise, they took away the benefits from the immigrant adults. So that's where we're at. And we need to scrutinize in Southern Illinois where our tax dollars are going. And if a candidate is using this to promote success, we need to scrutinize it. And I've told you in these two categories reasons why this may not necessarily be true. And the bottom line is who's going to be paying the taxes for the upcoming year to support these programs. Now, I need to get the other one up here. I want to talk about Troy, Illinois. This affects us in Southern Illinois, and it is a good discussion. So, the residents of Troy, Illinois are actively opposed to a 500 megawatt data center. So, I wanted to know why they are against it. And for the people of Troy, Illinois, it centers on several quality of life and environmental concerns as the project moves through the local approval process, meaning the City Council of Troy, Illinois. First one, environmental and flooding risk. Residents in nearby areas such as Farm Meadows subdivision fear that paving over roughly 300 acres of farmland will worsen the existing water drainage and flooding issues. Noise pollution. Neighbors are concerned about a constant industrial hum from large scale cooling systems and backup generators. Some residents have specifically cited risks of health issues from low frequency noise. Okay. Strain on local resources. And this is a big one for the country and even in Missouri. There is a significant worry regarding maximum amount of electricity and water these facilities will consume. Residents fear this demand could lead to higher utility bills or potential power shortages on a local grid. Community character. Many feel the project will fundamentally change Troy's small town rural identity. A specific concern involves Bethel Church and Academy, which could potentially be surrounded by the industrial complex on all sides. And then they talk about economic disparity. Okay. So for the environmental and flooding risk and noise pollution, those are valid concerns. And if the company trying to bring in the data center is on their game, they can explain these pretty reasonable that the people of Troy, Illinois would be okay. I mean, they could even change where it's at in Troy, Illinois, but a lot of that is based on how much the property costs and what would be the cost overruns if whoever they're selling it to land, buying the land from, if they all of a sudden went up on the prices of the land. Strains on local resources. This is probably, like I said previously, the most important bullet of perception. The electricity rates are based on the Illinois legislature and executives from Ameren discussing infrastructure and asking the legislature to pass a law that the rates for electricity go up. And like I've said about 10 times now, they approved that last year. That's why the rates are going up. And probably in the next 2 or 3 months, we're going to be in the spring and summer rates. Now, those could only go up higher if Ameren or whoever the electricity provider are saying that yes, they have problems with the infrastructure, and the data center is drawing out way too much power. That could happen. However, in the planning phase to put this into action, the developer of the data center would cover this, and they should be working with folks like Ameren already, and the general population shouldn't have to raise this as a concern. Water for the facility. We got some pretty smart people in Illinois, and we can figure out that point. The point is, you need the water for cooling, or it can be used for that. And also, the equipment is servers, routers, things like that. They need to be cooled. Well, you can do that with electricity, or you can do that with water systems. So that is a major concern too. And as long as the developer or whoever owns the data center is taking care of that, then there shouldn't be any reason for it to affect the community. And the bottom line is this on this issue: the rates only are going up if the legislature of Illinois is allowing them to do that. That's why I always go back to voting and knowing who your local representatives in the legislature are, because then you can make sure that they are working with Ameren to ensure that if they need infrastructure and they are getting money from taxpayers, that that's what the money is being used for, and giving updates to the population that they are doing that. That can be worked out. Impact on the community character, those are important for residents because that's based on word of mouth of people who want to keep the small town identity. And as previously stated, if they need to move it south or north a little bit, that can be reasonable, because that is something that is coming from the community. And it's going to be hard to say, well, uh, it'll still be a small town. I don't think people will buy that. And the other thing is, the data centers provide few long-term jobs once construction is finished. They believe that economic benefits like tax revenue do not outweigh the negative impacts on property values and local infrastructure. Okay, so that's under economic disparity. I would say that I need more information to why Troy, Illinois residents think that um, there will be jobs associated, but what they're really talking about is you can remote into the equipment. So the person could be living in Chicago. So the company, whoever's bringing this forward, again, needs to explain it to to the benefits of residents, because they could do something as simple as saying, okay, well, even if you're working from at home, it's people who are in the Troy, Illinois area. That would maybe bring it down some, and that people would be more willing to agree that there's not an economic disparity. So that's what's going on in our area. And it ties in with the federal government policy on data centers currently that I talked about the part two this week. And so the only reason that I bring it up, there is a blend of something that I have noted. Artificial intelligence in data centers are being used interchangeably. And a data center houses servers and routers, and they are used by many companies in Illinois to host their businesses. They could be used for exclusively AI stuff. We don't know. The point is, don't confuse AI and artificial intelligence taking jobs away from humans from what the purpose or a big purpose of data centers are. Data centers house information. And again, some of it could be for artificial intelligence. And by virtue of having a data center, bottom line is you're not taking away anybody's job, because to administrate the servers and routers and stuff for several years, it's changed anyway, that the number of people in IT that are needed to do that workload has significantly gone down anyway. That's why I said you can make it a condition that you hire people in Troy, Illinois, even if they are in the area and they still don't have to come to work. So that is a, if they promote AI and data centers differently, whoever our experts are, and whoever's trying to get this across to the people in Troy, Illinois, that those are actually separate in many ways. I think that people in Troy, Illinois might understand what is going to happen long term. And the only real issue is electricity and water, which, if you have a great presentation, can be explained away pretty easily, or you have some kind of contract agreement that explains this to a level that people can understand and get on board with. And as always, you should always take what voters and people in these towns and cities are telling you and make the case. This is Just Listen Live, hosted by George. Thank you for listening in. I'm hoping that people are listening in or at least looking at it later. Have a great day, and we'll be back Friday to wrap up the week.